Coming to you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, this is the Spit Sports Show. What a wild season this has been so far for our hometown Vancouver Canucks. Like, it feels like every time they take a step forward, they don't necessarily take two steps back, but it feels like they take a step and a half, if that makes sense. And no, no stretch has encapsulated this better than the last three games where they had huge wins over the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers and obviously the awesome Colorado Avalanche by 4-0 and then 3-1. But in between that, they just get absolutely walloped by the Boston Bruins, where it seemed like from the first puck drop, the Canucks never really had a chance in that game. And it just kind of encapsulates the season in a way that, like, the Canucks at their best are clearly one of the 10 best teams in hockey, undisputedly. The thing is, their floor has been so low this season that their worst performances have just been bottom five level, which is so odd for a head coach like Rick Tocchet, who you'd think with his defensive systems and the way he coaches, that would raise up the floor to the point where your worst losses really aren't terrible performances. But listen, the Canucks have been very, very up and down this season. And obviously, it's not all grim at the moment by any means. They're still in the playoffs, firmly in a wild card spot. Thatcher Demko has looked freaking amazing since he's been back. I thought he looked a little bit shaky in his first game, but since then, that he really does look like that Vezina caliber goaltender from last year, which is huge. I did not expect that, especially coming off a knee injury that significant for a goalie. Goalies and knee injuries, that's scary, especially with the way goalies play nowadays. This isn't the 70s where Ken Dryden could just stand up and kick pucks out of the way. Obviously, they're constantly in the butterfly, constantly putting tension on that joint. So with him looking great, that is just a great sign for the Canucks moving forward, especially with what Kevin Lankinen's been doing, which has been just historically impressive. And Quinn Hughes, to me, is the Hart Trophy leader right now, considering what he's doing for that decimated Canucks blue line, which I'm going to get into in just a second. Every single game, he sets the tone. Every single game, he's the one making clean zone entries and clean zone exits. And if you look at all of the stat scorecards, which I've been shouting out lately on the show, he has been at or near the top of every single game in these past 6 game stretch, I would say. So Quinn Hughes, Thatcher Demko, obviously awesome. Pedersen's been playing way better since Miller went out. And even since Miller's been back, he's been playing great. And since Miller came back, he's been awesome. He had a goal in his first game back, a couple of points. He's been awesome. But the reason this is an issue, though, is because the Canucks general manager came out publicly and said, Jim Rutherford said, we need to add a couple more pieces to contend, which saying that publicly is just brain dead stupid. First of all, it gives the players on the ice an excuse in their own heads where, oh, we just don't have the roster to really compete for a championship. You know, it's another excuse to fall back on if the players don't play to their full extent, in my opinion. It's just something in the back of their head that they can use as an excuse. And also, just saying publicly that you need another piece is dumb for the reason of the other GMs are obviously going to hear that quote, know that you're going to want to make a move. And obviously, if someone needs to make a move or get rid of something in any facet of life, like if I have a grand piano in my house right now and I'm moving to a mini apartment, like I have to get rid of that thing. It has to be out of my house. So whoever I'm selling it to, if they have that information that I need to get rid of it, they're going to try to lowball me for it because they know you'll probably take what you can get. This is that same scenario, except with they're on the buying market instead of the selling market. Now, does it make it different? Maybe. But I still think outward publicly saying we need another piece is just short-sighted. It's short-sighted. But is he wrong? Probably not. We definitely need to add another puck-moving defenseman. I've been begging for this for feels like years now. Vinny Desharnais has not exactly worked out the way we thought he would. Probably looking to get rid of him for whatever defenseman we might bring in and his $2 million a year cap hit. The reason why the Canucks in particular are being mentioned so much in trade talks before the deadline is because their general manager has a firm history of making moves before the trade deadline and not on the actual day, which I think makes total sense. You look at it in football, NBA, they all have their own trade deadlines, which it seems like all trades get made right before that line. But what I've always thought is that would mean there's more competition for the assets that you're trading for. So going for it earlier while these teams can get a quick return is always smart in my opinion. So Rutherford going for these trades before the deadline is something that I think makes current and future sense. There's no doubt about it. But the problem is they only have about $2 million right now to play with. And if they trade Desharnais away, that's about $4 million. So they're going to need to do some cap finagling because if they're trying to get a top 4D man, like everyone is reporting they will, it's going to cost you around $4.5 to $5 million for one of those kind of players. And I'm about to go through a few of them who I think would be really, really cool fits. Obviously, the one that everyone is mentioning is Ivan Provorov from the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are not good. Provorov is a good puck moving defenseman, and he would be a solid fit in that top four. But Provorov being in Columbus, he and his brother just committed to Ohio State are very close. So Provorov is obviously in Columbus, Ohio. His brother is transferring to Ohio State to play his college hockey. The brothers are reportedly very close. They might want to be together. And I think it was reported that his brother choosing Ohio State had a lot to do with the fact that Ivan is in Columbus in that area. And he's obviously spent a lot of time there watching his brother play. So does he want to be moved at this current point in time? I don't know, but I think that would be an awesome fit, and that's the one that's being talked about the most. So I'm gonna leave it at that. But some other looks who I, took a peek at was Bowen Byram. Now, this one hasn't been reported quite as widely, but it has been out there. I've been in love with Bowen Byron's game since he was on the Vancouver Giants. He was obviously by far the best player whenever I got to go watch some Giants games, which the arena's like 20, maybe 15 minutes away from my house. So I got to see a bunch of his games. Smooth skater, very, very good puck mover, has a lot of potential. He's dealt with some injuries early in his career, but that should probably make getting him a little more affordable considering his history. And obviously the Sabres are on just an unbelievable skid right now. I really did think that Buffalo in these next 2-3 years was going to make some noise in the Eastern Conference, at least make the playoffs a couple times. They have been horrendous. They're on, I think, an 11-game losing streak at this point. So obviously they're in selling mode instead of buying mode. The thing about Bowen Byram is, though, he's making 3.8 right now, which is perfect, but he is a UFA after this season. And with him being as young as he is, you're probably going to expect that he wants more than that bridge deal that the Sabres gave to him. He's probably going to want anywhere between 5 and 6, depending on how he plays for the rest of the season. So that might be a bit of an issue. But on my wish list, he would probably be the number one pick. The other potential targets I thought could work are Marcus Peterson, however you want to pronounce it, from the Penguins. He's making about 4 mil right now, and although the Penguins are currently in a wild card spot, I don't expect them to stay there. I flatly don't think the Penguins are a very good hockey team. They obviously have the greatest player of the generation who is still dominant and unbelievable and beating the test of time. But I feel like their depth is weak and their defensive depth is really weak, which is what makes me think they might not feel very good about parting ways with Pedersen at this point in his career, especially with Crosby still being on the Penguins. And when Crosby's on your team, you're in somewhat of win now mode. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they held on to him or asked for a ridiculous haul. Rasmus Anderson is another guy who came up to me, $4.5 million, very, very similar player to Pedersen, good puck mover is another guy. But the one that really, caught my eye and I think would be an awesome story, which is what I root for. I root for stories in sports because it gives me something interesting to talk about. Bringing back Nikita Zadorov could be the move for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, he's making 5 mil right now, which is so interesting because obviously the offseason negotiations between him and Vancouver were very tenuous, and he ended up only signing for $5 million in Boston. But he has 8 points in 33 games over there. The fit clearly has not worked out the way the Bruins thought they had. And one thing that we do know about the Bruins front office is they can be very instantaneous to make a move. I don't know a better synonym for that. I apologize, but they are very quick to make changes. They're impulsive. Couldn't that word come to me before? Impulsive. They have quite impulsive ownership who, whenever they see even the least bit of struggles, they will make a change to become better. Obviously, we saw that with Jim Montgomery earlier in the year. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're looking into potentially trading Zadorov. Now, 5 mil is going to be tough for the Vancouver Canucks. They're probably going to have to add in another player, potentially a Teddy Bluger, Brandon Sutter, Pius Suter, which I don't think is an option for them. So that might be out of the question financially. But as a defenseman, obviously we've seen him on this team before in the playoffs. He was phenomenal. And a huge reason why we came as close as we did to knocking out the Oilers in round 2 and won the first round series against Nashville, who people forget were scathing hot going into that series and were a very popular pick to upset the Canucks. So Zadorov's a proven commodity. He can move the puck so well for a big man. And the fact that he's struggling so much in Boston rather, I can definitely see the Bruins making a trade like that. So those are some options, but the thing that's also interesting about what the Canucks are trying to do right now is they maybe want a winger. That has been widely reported by Rick Dollywall, who's a local radio guy here, and he does some TV stuff too. And when he reports something, I take it as fact. I know Rick quite well, so if he says the Canucks want a winger, they want a winger. Maybe Brock Besser isn't going to resign. That is probably the main theory as to why they would want a top end winger, because Besser being a UFA after the season, although there's been no reporting that the Canucks and him won't reach a deal. In fact, I'm pretty confident they will. But the way these contract negotiations work, you just never know how they're going to play out, especially with so much time left in the season. So getting a bit of insurance on the wing could be a good idea. I don't think they should trade for a winger unless it's absolutely perfect. I think absolutely, unquestionably, a top 4 defenseman is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on their wish list for Christmas this year. I think winger should be down there at about 13th behind 12 top 4 D-men on their wish list. Just picture that now. Number 1, number 2. You understand the picture. So if they get a winger, it's going to have to be the perfect move. As for the top 4 defensemen, any of those guys I just mentioned, if you can get your hands on one of them for Desharnais, a pick, you're laughing. So they've got to go for that. And if they really want to make something out of this high expectation season, A, they're going to need to make that move. But B, Filip Hronek's going to have to come back from this injury and play like he was playing, not even in the playoffs or regular season this year, how he was playing in the regular season last year. Because people forget now that he's out and, they have these fond memories of him. Hronek was bad in the playoffs last year, and he wasn't exactly playing well in the regular season before he got hurt. So he's going to have to come back and play great, and they're going to have to make a move. And when that happens, I think their forward core is more than good enough to make a Stanley Cup push. And with Demko playing as well as he is right now, it's hard for me to deny that they have A to A+ goaltending right now, especially with Kevin Lankinen being on one of the greatest goalie hot streaks we've seen in Canucks history. So things are not bleak in Vancouver, even though their record is not where fans expected it to be at this point in the season. I definitely didn't expect it to be at this point. But I want your guys' thoughts. If you agreed with what I said in some of the points, please leave a like on the video. If you disagreed or agreed and want to let me know, please leave a comment about the Canucks, hockey, anything you'd like to talk about. I love to talk about sports and would love to respond to you guys in the comments below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Spit Sports Show just hit over 370 subscribers. Big things happening over here. As always, I will see you all in a minute. Peace out.